we live?
We are live. I hear you loud.
Yo, what's up?
So this is the great reveal of the great reveal, because we are kind of the four horsemen, but really this is about the great reveal. And if anyone wants to understand kind of where that comes from, apocalypse actually means the great revealing, and is our point here with this podcast to talk about everything from God, politics, philosophy, everything kind of under the sun and the moon, and go over it all. So we're going to have a little fun with current events, a little news, a little adventure. We're going to go down that rabbit hole every week, and we're going to have some very interesting topics, bring some guests, and this is just step one. So welcome to the party. My name is Don. This is Tyler.
My name's Steve. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. So today, we're going to do a little debate recap on kind of the ABC backlash going on over there, which I think they got more than they bargained for. It really wasn't about the dogs and the cats. It was kind of, I think Trump actually got more of a bounce than Kamala did. So that's interesting. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the RFK, Tulsi Gabbard kind of coalition. I mean, you saw Trump with the influencers, at his rallies now, and the whole coalition he's building. So we're going to go over some of that stuff. We're going to talk about, go back a little bit into the Nord Stream pipeline, fiasco over there with Russia, and talk about how that is working for the greater scale of geopolitics and what's going on with that. And will we enter World War III? Is World War III going to be on the horizon? Are they going to start World War III before the election? And then we're going to talk about something, we're going to go down the rabbit hole with the assassination of Donald Trump. Was it staged? By who? We're going to talk about it today.
You never know. Yeah.
On the Great Reveal Podcast, episode 1. All right.
Let me pull up that article there for you, Don.
I'm excited about this. Let's go.
All right. So this first one, now everyone saw the debate. We did a little debate watch party. That was kind of our little test episode. So what's interesting is people obviously Drudge Report right away. Now, we should back it up really quick, because the first debate between Trump and Biden, I think it's good to set the stage there. First of all, no presidential debate had happened before the nomination. That was a very unusual thing. I think Trump kind of shouldn't have done that. Honestly, he should have waited till the nominations were done, and then Biden would have been really screwed. But they kind of pushed him into it. Obviously, the anchors and the pundits and everyone were ready. They were ready. They were fair and balanced on that one debate only, because they were ready with the shiv for Joe Biden right after the debate. So they were like, okay, Biden's done. And that was the hustle, and that was right. And then we go into the assassination and all that craziness. So they were ready for that. So then we come into this debate, and you were like, oh, well, the last debate was kind of fair and balanced. And this one was out of control, not fair and balanced. And I think we have a clip we will play in a little bit where ChatGPT actually analyzes the transcript of the debate and how unfair. I mean, how many times did Kamala Harris get fact checked?
Zero.
Zero times. How many follow-up questions did she get?
Zero.
It was a pretty easy day for her. She was pretty happy.
Yeah, we can kind of go back into, Donna Brazile with the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump debate, where she actually got in trouble for releasing the questions to Hillary Clinton before the debate. So we know this thing's happened, and we know the connection between the Kamala Harris and Lindsay, the debate moderator, the woman. She was sorority sisters, right? And there's some ABC connections with her husband and some people. There's a lot of familial connections with ABC. That's why Kamala didn't want anything to do with Fox News, NBC, even CBS. They wanted ABC because they had it in the bag. So
I completely forget who was actually connected to her. Was it one of her friends, or was it cousin? There was some direct connection to ABC and her family. Do you remember what it was?
It was Dana Walden, a senior Disney executive.
Yes, and then the sorority sisters with.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, on a scale of 1 to 100%, what do you think the percentage was that Kamala was given a little inside information, the topics, example questions?
So I have heard the rumor that she did have a little earbud piece over there, and I'm not 100%
with the little earpiece. Yeah.
but all of her responses were very scripted.
It just, if you look at the contrast between her actual interviews, if she does interviews, hypothetically, it just has an odd way of her kind of, the way she sounded just came off very different from what you normally would think what she would speak. And a lot of people who watch it probably just thought, hey, she sounds great tonight. But something just seemed really, really odd, if you guys kind of agree. So
I fully agree. I definitely think that usually she's a bumbling mess that just laughs about everything.
Word salad.
But
word salad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely seemed like she knew everything that was coming. These ample questions, like she knew absolutely was coming in. That's expected. I mean, you almost, in this day and age, I know the meme went around with the hookah, like the earrings, right, with the microphone or the speakers. But I think it's obvious. I mean, and this is something we'll kind of go into later in the episode about kind of the deep state in general. Like if you're playing at this level, I mean, you're playing to win. And, it's like you watch House of Cards, Kevin Spacey. It was very, very good show, before the whole thing. But, this is a serious game and people die. Like it's a life or death game. And of course, with these stakes, of course, you're going to cheat. Of course, you're going to do things. I mean, we've talked about every debate almost. There's talk about earpieces in. I mean, you can put it in your tooth. I mean, the technology out there, it's out. It's like, obviously, there's going to be some help. Like, it's like, so I don't think that's really any surprise. But what's interesting about this cycle and this cycle in general is, and kind of the context of the great reveal is, we all kind of see through it now. And that's what's most interesting about this ABC debate is the backlash they got.
I think what did that was COVID. A lot of people being so isolated, being in their homes, and then being able to work from home, and then having to go back to the office and having that sense of freedom. I think that really opened their eyes when they weren't constantly daily in a cubicle.
Yeah. And we saw the overarching just hypocrisy of the COVID stuff. There's just what they were saying. It just obviously wasn't true about.
And it didn't make sense. None of the rules made sense. It just didn't make sense. And then they treated it as if it was sensical when it was not. Let's take a look really quick at that TikTok video.
So actually, wait, let's pull up the polls really quick. Before we do that, I want to look at the poll. Yeah. So let's look at the bounce. So it's interesting because you thought Kamala was going to have a bounce, and there kind of was like after the
a little bit
the convention, but after the debate, we're actually seeing people move in Trump's direction, the undecideds, which I think was really interesting. So there was an article here, and this is mainstream polling. So people are just, they see it, they get it. Do you have that link?
Oh, you're talking about that Zero Hedge?
The Zero Hedge, yeah. Pull up.
Yeah, let me pull it up for you really quick here. I also got a corresponding video for that as well.
Let's check it out.
So this is going to be post-debate. Undecided voters pick Trump as Nate Silver sees electoral college path to victory.
Mm-hmm. Now, question: Nate Silver from previous elections, how accurate was he? Just for the viewers to understand, just his background.
Nate Silver, I believe he was the guy. He runs 538. He kind of got famous because he kind of predicted 2016. He was the one that was saying, "Hey, Trump's going to have it," and everyone was saying no, and that's kind of what shown his, gave his day in the sun. And so they've been kind of following his models. His models are very different than other models because the polls are typically Trump is underpolled. I mean, you even hear James Carville, the Democratic strategist, saying, if Harris is up 3 points, she's probably going to lose or it's a tie. She needs to be up 5 points at least to be in the running in the polls. That's what he says. So if you look at this, I mean, that's crazy. This is. And Nate Silver's model was not this, and he is not a Trump person. I mean, he has been very much,
Wasn't Nate Silver earlier had Kamala in a big lead, and there was a dramatic shift recently, I don't know if I'm pretty accurate with that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was a big shift within the past couple months, and now he has a big shift for Trump. So I'm just,
Well,
Yeah.
no,
Oh,
look at these
absolutely.
numbers. I mean, 61 to 38.
it's crazy.
So right
Yeah.
there, that's a great one right there. BuzzFeed.
Mhm.
BuzzFeed is not necessarily a right-leaning organization. Find Trump leads with undecideds by 5 points post-debate, improves from pre-debate. So the
Wow.
undecideds are saying, I still have no idea what Kamala Harris's policies are, or she's literally saying the opposite of what she was saying before. And here we are. We're entirely into something different. So,
Which is why she wants more debates. And she's like, hey, let's have another one because
right. So they can have more cats and dogs memes. I mean, I'm digging the remixes and the memes and everything. The cats and dogs. Actually, we should have had that clip lined up.
Yeah, we should.
Here's another one here. It's
That's
showing breaking. Michigan poll finds more voters switch from Harris to Trump after the debate, looking at 5%.
I mean, he's got the working class. I mean, he just came out with the new policy, no tax. Oh, we got no tax on tips, right? No tax on overtime. That's
Those are
really awesome. Now, and when you
those are
figure
Kamala's policies.
no taxes on overtime, I mean, the employer's not paying. So when you think about taxes, right? So the employer and the employee split the taxes. So that's why when you're self-employed, you have to pay that whole tax package. So when you're when you're playing, when you're an employee, you pay half of it. You pay your, Social Security, Medicare, that kind of stuff. So not getting taxed on overtime doesn't just benefit the employee, it benefits the employer. And now everybody's motivated to do that. You're going to see GDP and production go through the roof with that. Nurses, truck drivers, just there's so many working class people that can hit overtime. I mean, that's a major percent. That's free money. That's more money in your pocket that's not going to the government. And it's not like you're taking money out of, the pot for programs and things like that. That's just almost like opening the faucet for labor. It's fantastic. And no taxes on tips. I mean, most tips aren't taxed anyway, but just making it a policy position. Trump got endorsed by the Teamsters.
Yes, and they are extremely far left for the most part.
But that's crazy. I mean,
extremely.
The Republicans have finally captured the working class, and for good reason. And it's we and the youth. I mean, at the last rally, the influencers he's had, it's really crazy. So let's just real quick back to the debate. So we have that clip. So what's interesting about the debate, and this says it all. So there was a person that actually took the transcript and uploaded it to ChatGPT and asked for a analysis. And I think the results are it's a couple minutes long, but I think it's really interesting. And you know what? It's not my word, not your word, not CNN, not Fox News. Let's just see what the robot says.
I've actually got it right here. Pulling it up as we speak. Let's see what the robot says.
Perfect.
Yesterday, and the perceived bias that the moderators had against Trump, I decided to take the transcript of the entire debate and put it into ChatGPT and see whether ChatGPT detected any bias. And the analysis that I got was pretty shocking. So take a look. Now, this is going to be a little long, so bear with me.
In the transcript you provided, there are some points where bias could potentially be inferred, though it is important to note that bias detection can be subjective. Here are a few instances that may suggest bias. 1. Tone in questioning. Example. 1. David Muir's question to Donald Trump regarding January 6th. You told your supporters to march to the Capitol. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Analysis. The phrasing of this question frames Trump's actions in a negative light, suggesting direct responsibility for the Capitol attack. While January 6th is an important event to question Trump on, the repeated framing of Trump as the instigator of the attack might suggest a critical tone. The absence of any comparably critical or pointed questions towards Harris might suggest an imbalance. Example 2. David Muir's follow-up after Trump's defense on January 6th. Muir presses Trump on personal responsibility for the attack, while Trump deflects by placing the blame on Nancy Pelosi and the Washington, D.C. mayor. Muir insists The question is about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. Analysis. Muir continues to steer the conversation toward Trump's actions, while allowing Harris more leeway to respond to broader topics without similar pressure. 2. Fact-checking Trump, but not Harris. Example. During the discussion on Springfield, Ohio, David Muir interjects to clarify Trump's claim about immigrants eating pets. We did reach out to the city manager of Springfield. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused. Analysis. Muir quickly fact-checks Trump's more outlandish claim about Springfield. While fact-checking is part of a moderator's role, there's no evidence in the transcript. The moderator similarly fact-checked any claims made by Harris. If Trump's statement was scrutinized more rigorously than Harris, that might suggest an element of bias. 3. Lack of follow-up questions for Harris. Example. When Harris was asked about her stance on an abortion ban, the moderator asked, "Would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?" Harris responded broadly by discussing Roe v. Wade without directly answering whether she supported any specific restrictions. Analysis. The moderators did not press Harris for a clear yes or no answer or a follow-up question, which contrasts with the way they pressed Trump on certain topics, such as January 6th, or his views on Ukraine. 4. Closing statement. Framing. Example. In the closing statements, David Muir sets up Harris by thanking her first and allowing her to outline her vision. Trump follows with a pointed response about what she hasn't accomplished during her time as vice president, which could easily appear more combative. Analysis. While the candidates are responsible for their statements, the structure of allowing Harris to go first and Trump to follow may have given Harris an advantage in presenting herself as the more positive, forward-looking candidate,
That was a
leaving
coin
Trump
flip,
in the role of defense. Conclusion. While overt bias is not immediately apparent, there are instances where the moderators may have pressed Trump harder on his controversial statements or actions, while allowing Harris more leeway in answering difficult questions. The disparity in the number of follow-ups, tone in questioning, and fact-checking suggests that Trump may have faced a more critical approach. This could create the perception of bias, especially if one candidate is scrutinized more intensely than the other.
So this analysis proves definitively that there was bias against Trump, and all the bias went in favor of Harris. And so all the people claiming that there wasn't any bias are lying to you. This was a 3-on-1 event. It should be clear to everyone that this was not a fair representation of how journalists are supposed to behave. And because of the blatant bias, the narrative has turned against ABC, and Kamala Harris will not see a bump because of this. That's my prediction.
Boom. And I think he was completely spot on because you didn't, and people know it. And now there's been like some memes and stuff going around like, oh, there's a whistleblower about the questions being leaked and all that kind of stuff, which we'll see. But it's obvious. We know, we get this is how the game's played. Everyone's it's just so obvious. So let's just kind of break down that a little bit. What's your takeaways from that?
I just find it interesting if it seems so obvious to us and maybe the viewers, of course, are there actual other people from the spectrum of understanding if this is, true or not? They might just think, hey, she did a great job. She's a lot better than Trump and her debate was amazing. And that's why you go on most of those media stations and that's what they're saying. And that's all they're going to get for the information, and it's kind of like an information war in a sense where you just have to figure out what's going to make sense and what's not going to make sense. So do you think most people?
I personally don't think that most people understand. You have to think a lot of people for them, politics is in passing. And the people that are super hardcore into politics are on two different parts of the spectrum. They're going to be either the people that really follow it and understand it, or the people that are religious about it, like the never Trumpers and people that are, all of a sudden Kamala is our queen. Those kind of people, they also exist on the right. They do, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. There's two extremes.
There's extremes on both sides.
Mhm.
But I definitely don't think that people are going to do too much about it. I think people that do realize it, are complicit and complacent. And there's really not much that people think they can do. People feel powerless at this point. They want to participate in democracy. They want to participate in the election process. But I think a lot of people, even though they go to the polls, they feel like their vote's not being counted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And on top of that, I mean, if you really think about it, this kind of relates into what's going on with RFK and Tulsi Gabbard, because people do feel disenfranchised. Just go back to 2016. I mean, look at the Bernie Sanders, and what they did to him in both 2016 and 2020 cycle. And that's kind of what's interesting about the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party, is the way the parties are actually set up, is because I sent a link to somebody about this and they said, super cool, won't be legal. They make dope phones. I don't know. I think our links are weird. Anyway, the way the parties are set up, you can have an insurgent candidate in the Republican Party. You can't have that in the Democratic Party. They can just shut it right down. That's why Dennis Kucinich got nowhere and Ron Paul actually had a pretty good campaign in 2016. Or I'm sorry, 2008, back in 2008, back then. So, and that Tea Party movement, right, as Obama during the midterms, that Tea Party movement, that's really what kind of started. That was kind of the beginning of the Trump base, right? And you were able to do that because we're an open party. The Democrats have superdelegates. They shut it down. They saw Bernie Sanders that, he was on the left, but he was a little too far. He was actually too far on the people. See, I would actually rather Bernie Sanders than a Hillary Clinton or a Biden, because I know where he actually stands, and he actually isn't part of the team. He's not part of the game. He's crazy. His policies are radical and they won't work. But
let me ask you a question, Don. Actually, I'm curious, when it comes to the party systems, like you're mentioning, do you feel like there's a trend, like, Bernie Sanders, trying to be the outspoken one, and then the Democrats are just like, no, we're not going to let you go in here. We're not going to let you do anything. Same with Trump. Do you think Americans are realizing, in your opinion, that they want to do a different party? They don't want to be part of the Democrats. They don't want to be part of the Republicans. I think most Americans want someone that has good ideas. What do you say? That's kind of where,
of course,
as of today, that's what's happening.
Ross Perot is what I'm going to say. And, we're a little young, but for that generation, but for people that don't know, Ross Perot basically was the spoiler. So if you look, it went, you had the kind of
Bush.
Let's just go back, actually. Let's go back, actually, to JFK, right? And after JFK was assassinated, we had Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? And then he didn't run for re-election. Hey, LBJ, how many kids you killed today? Vietnam, they didn't like him. So he didn't win. So actually, after LBJ, he decided not to run again. Then you had Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was actually the most popularly elected president in our history at the time. He was very, and he actually should maybe have won against JFK. There was a whole thing about cheated elections even back then.
As far as I know, Richard Nixon only lost one state. I think it was Massachusetts.
Correct. Yeah.
I think it was Massachusetts. Yep.
Landslide. So, and he was popularly reelected as well. And and then during all that stuff,
little guest appearance right there.
Oh my goodness.
That's awesome.
Hey,
all right, you take it from here. Hold on one second. Welcome to the podcast.
We'll take it from here.
Hey, what's up?
We're going to go ahead and we're going to get a little light on it. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, and what's going on in Ohio.
All right.
And
perfect.
A little bit of special music for you. We're going to go ahead, because this needs to be a ringtone. That is the title of this here video. And let's see if it will end up being a popular ringtone on somebody's page, right? Let's see there.
Let's listen to this.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. The cat. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat.
Wait.
Eat the cat. They're eating the cats. They're eating.
Yeah, they're eating the
Anyway.
eating the cats. A little break for you there. That's our
Back
sponsor.
to the history lesson. So
That might just make him win the election right now, honestly.
he's a meme president. And I mean,
He's a
Obama,
meme president. This is
Obama
perfect.
really won was he was the first president to kind of go at social media, you know, and Trump really, and Spence's son,
Mhm.
Barron, which that'll be another rabbit hole. Barron Trump, you know, is 18. He's been kind of connecting him with all the influencers. It's been really awesome. But real quick, back to that history. You know, we had Richard Nixon, right? Popularly elected. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff with that. I remember JFK, Eisenhower, all that warning us about secret societies, the CIA, the military industrial complex. There's a lot of shenanigans with, and we'll play a clip. I don't know, actually, Steve, you want to pull this up? Do you remember the Nixon clip talking about Bohemian Grove?
The Nixon clip talking about Bohemian Grove.
Yes.
No, but I can gladly.
I know what you're talking about.
Nixon, Bohemian Grove. I could definitely pull this up.
Okay. So,
offensive Nixon tapes released.
There you go.
Yeah, that's from 15 years ago. Hold on here.
15 years. Wow.
I'm not sure if that's going to be the one. I think we're getting a little off topic here.
No, we're not. We're going to go into this coalition because it really, really does matter. So, because it really traces, I think people don't really understand our political history and why we're at where we're at. Okay. Richard Nixon should not, the whole thing. And actually, Tucker Carlson had a really great interviewer of somebody that was involved in Watergate. Richard Nixon, it was a coup. It was a palace coup that took him down. It was the CIA was totally
100%.
involved. There was no reason to even go into Watergate building. It was like trying to get some opposition research or something. Nobody was even there. The election was already wrapped up. Nixon was going to win. It was kind of like the Russia thing. It was basically a setup. So then what did they do? They took Nixon down. And before they took him down, they made him switch out his vice president. They made his vice president resign and they put in Gerald. Right. And then they put in Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
Right? Who he, if you look him up, he played the game. He was in all the organizations. Yep. He was the establishments guy, right? They put him in, he did the thing. And remember, this is the formation of the deep state, the CIA, the FBI, and all those apparatus, all the secret programs, the black budget programs getting, ramped up and funded. So then you had Gerald Ford. And then who do we have next? Jimmy Carter, who brought in, who was the worst president until
good old Jimmy.
Jimmy Carter loves Joe Biden, for anybody that may not know that. And he's quoted as saying that he loves him because he's no longer the worst.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Yeah. So, and that is exactly right, because that was the 70s, inflation and just crime. And, that's when the cocaine was being brought in. And that's a whole other rabbit hole. Who was the cocaine being brought in by?
The CIA.
And what's interesting about that, and just a quick aside, because we'll definitely talk about that. I think this is a great rabbit hole since we're in the Great Reveal podcast. If you actually look up the Nazis at the end of World War II, when they lost, they actually went to Argentina. They went to South America. And it's actually in Narcos, the show Narcos, they actually say this. Why did Pablo Escobar become the most prolific smuggler? Because his techniques were the best, because they were using
submarines,
and chemistry. He would actually turn the cocaine into like boats and stuff like that, and then they'd break it back down into the United States. Who taught them the chemistry?
The Germans.
Nazi scientists, okay?
There's complete German villages in South America, all over South America.
Oh, yeah. Brazil,
but that again, that is a completely another rabbit hole.
But anyway, what I'm saying is, that was, but again, Operation Paperclip brought those guys over here into the CIA, and there's a whole full circle connection, and that's how a lot of black budget operations are funded. So you have to think about, again, this is all very relevant because JFK knew this. He wasn't a part of the plan, and we're gonna get there. Nixon was, and again, did you find that clip from Bohemian Grove for Nixon?
I could not find it, unfortunately.
Oh my! All right, I will find that for maybe the end of the show, because I think that's a really great clip. So when someone else speaks, so anyway, so we got to Jimmy Carter, right? And then Jimmy Carter brought in Ronald Reagan, who came in kind of like Trump, right? And kind of saved the day. He was an actor. He was a stage man. He cleaned it up. Now, who was Ronald Reagan's vice president?
George H.W. Bush.
And what was George H.W.
CIA.
Bush's position before vice president?
He led the CIA.
He was the head of the CIA. That's
Yes.
correct. George H.W. Bush was the guy. Now, remember, George H.W. Bush, son of Prescott Bush, who was deeply involved with the Nazis.
Tesla connection.
And
Tesla
making a lot of
connection.
money with the Nazis and all that stuff. Like there was a lot of money being made. If you watch like Schindler's List and all that stuff, Prescott Bush making the money from the Nazi slave labor and all this stuff. Anyway, so George H.W. Bush, there you go. So he was the next in line. Obviously, they're just keeping it going. And Ronald Reagan was kind of, controlled, right? Because the vice president was George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan, the Iran-Contra affair, right? They were just doing what they wanted to do, regardless of what the president wanted. Reagan was just a great face. They put him in, and they were just doing the dirty work and just doing it. And, you had, the people on the news pundits just spewing out the propaganda. So then midterm, or his re-election, Clinton. Now we get back to the point of Ross Perot. Right. So we have Clinton. Now, Clinton was relevant because of Mesa, Arizona, Arkansas and all that. Right. Or was it Mesa or Arkansas? Because the airplanes with the CIA going down, and Clinton suddenly was like, oh, there's drugs in the CIA. And suddenly Clinton was new money. Right. He wasn't old money like the Bushes. Clinton kind of was read into the programs because he kind of got involved. And then they had him diddling some kids. They got him, exposed. And the Clintons were very controllable. Right. So they were like, all right, well, he plays ball. So we'll put him up for the Democratic candidate. And he shouldn't have won, except for Ross Perot. Ross Perot was the Trump of the time. Ross Perot, who came in with a lot of money. He came in with his business acumen. He basically was an independent, insurgent, third-party candidate. And this is really relevant. Right. And he came in.
Where he's from?
No. Texas? Oh yeah, Texas. Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Texas.
There's a beautiful, beautiful science museum right in Dallas. That's the Ross Perot Science Museum. If you're ever in town, I should take you.
Texas.
In Texas? Wait, in like Dallas or?
Yes, Dallas, right downtown.
Oh,
Really?
Dallas. So
That
Ross
is
Perot
really-
spoiled the election for George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton was elected. And that wasn't really supposed to happen, but it did. So whatever. What's going on over here? So Bill Clinton was elected, and whatever, he was controllable. So they had him elected, they had him going, and he won 2 terms. He was popular. But the revenge of the Bushes, George W. Bush comes in. And then
George W. was not in charge. You know that freaking Dick Cheney was behind him with the freaking, he had everything moving.
Dick Cheney was the my sound is being Dick Cheney was the
Dick Cheney's taking over. That's why.
Dick Cheney was the vice president for George W. Bush, right? But what was his position prior to that?
He worked at Halliburton.
The chief of staff
of
George W. Bush.
Yes,
you're right.
that's correct.
He was Daddy Bush's chief of staff.
A good portion of his father's staff actually ended up in his own cabinet. I mean, it wasn't Colin Powell involved as well? Which, by the way, I think Colin Powell is probably the only decent person out of that whole cabinet.
And that's a kind of similar to the Biden administration with the Obama holdovers, right? They all came in, they all did all that.
But the thing is, though, is if you go back far enough, you really understand what's happening. And what's happening is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So when we get to this
hold on. Can I just finish my point, please? There is one of the presidents, and you guys could tell me which one it was, but he's quoted as saying that presidents are not elected. They are selected.
Bingo.
Which president?
Yep.
Which president was that?
Was it
Roosevelt?
Roosevelt.
Teddy or FDR?
FDR.
Mr. 3 or 4 term president. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he was selected more than once. Yes.
I swear that was Reagan who said that. No, it was FDR.
Okay. All right. And that's true because they are selected, and it's true. And that's that's a very good point because that brings us to the crux of what's going on now, which is the most interesting thing. So then we get to Obama. And Bush and Obama, they're all homies, and we'll have a fun rabbit hole about Obama and that whole thing. But, Obama was CIA political government royalty from the beginning. But that's a different rabbit hole for a different day. That
he was a good community organizer. I will get.
And he's a great speaker. Honestly, I listened to Obama.
Oh, yeah.
I want to be a Democrat. I want to believe him. He's such a great speaker. I love listening to him speak. He's so great.
Salowinski. So
yes, Salowinski. Yeah.
He had some great teachers.
Yep.
He
Really
did have
good
some
teachers.
same teachers as a few other people.
Obama, great. And then, okay, Hillary Clinton's turn. They knew they could be controlled, right? They had the Clinton control bill. Like, all right, they were like, Hillary Clinton's perfect. We'll put her up. And then comes Trump. He was the spoiler, and they didn't expect it. And, they always have their finger on the button, especially after Bush v. Gore, after that, after Ross Perot. Oh, so back to the two parties, because this all was spurred by your question, Tyler, about the parties.
Correct.
We had the independents. After Ross Perot, that's when they basically
they were not going to let that happen again.
They weren't going to let that happen again. Exactly. So that's why they made the independent parties platform just very difficult, and the laws changed and the financing changed, and they made it basically impossible, which is why we get RFK, them trying to challenge him, just trying to get on the ballot everywhere. And now they don't want him off the ballot, of course. So, all the Democratic Party did was fight RFK. They didn't want him in the primaries, and they didn't want him on the ballot then as an independent. And that's what pushed him out of the Democratic Party, literally into the party. Like, Trump necessarily isn't like a conservative, really. He's.
But the crazy thing about what you just talked about is it's a worldwide thing. We think it's just America, but if anyone else notices their country and the same kind of pattern and how it works throughout the rabbit hole, there's things that happen every country. Even like royalty and how, each people just, this is the new queen. This is the new king. It's all like a plan.
Except for Trump. It really is, because Trump wasn't supposed to. He was a joke. Trump came in and he just hit the message. And the Tea Party, which had kind of started forming during Obama, and this whole stream, this undercurrent, and with the rise of social media and the rise of new media and the ability of the Republican Party to kind of just win organically. They didn't have super delegates like the Democratic Party. Trump won. And they were like, oh shit. And then Trump won. And then he came up against Hillary. And you remember, he was expecting to lose. Like, his little party at the end, like, he had a little theater, a little stage set up. Hillary Clinton had the glass ceiling and the big giant building.
They had magazines prepared. It was
magazines prepared.
They had
fireworks.
They had Madam President magazines.
They knew it.
All thrown out.
And they've always put their finger on the, their thumb on the scale, especially after Bush v. Gore. But they didn't do it enough. And that's the thing what happened with Trump. He upset the polls. He upset turnout. He was too big to rig in 2016.
Too big to rig.
And that's why she just kind of was like, the election was over that night. There was nothing they could do. They just, it happened and it was over.
Now in this current election cycle, it is amazing to see people from all sorts of different political backgrounds coming together. You got RFK, you got Tulsi Gabbard, these people that are all Democrats, you got independents coming in. RFK he's known for a long time of the corruption. He lost his uncle. He lost his dad to the deep state. And, it's absolutely insane. I'm actually going to pull up a clip here. I know, Tyler, you have something prepared about RFK and the coalition, but this here is essentially RFK going over a little bit of his plans, because Trump does want to bring him into the fold, and he wants to give him the power that, like Don, you were saying, the Democrats just wanted to take away from him and call him crazy. It's absolutely insane.
He's a little crazy.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with his acronym, which I'm going to talk about, is called MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. So
yes,
we're going to dive into that after this clip.
All right, here we go.
Are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen to them? About 18% of American teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late-stage alcoholics who were elderly. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs. So what's causing this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. The first and the worst is ultra-processed food. About 70% of American children's diet is ultra-processed. That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of them formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans aren't biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous in American processed foods. The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine, and our environment. Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors. America's puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900. Our country has the earliest puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning all of our children and our adults.
We got it. Tyler, your
Sorry,
mic's
my mic
muted.
was-
There we go.
My bad. Sorry, just getting the kinks out. So, all right. So, what I want to talk about today, is we all know America is famous for its food culture. So, like burgers, fries, fried chicken, potato chips. You go to Chick-fil-A, you want to get your Chick-fil-A sandwich. But there's a lot of other healthy options where Americans don't really look at it and they think, hey, why don't I just go to Whole Foods and get a salad? Or why don't I just go into my local farmer's market and end up buying some produce and just make something at home? I think, as America, we're always in this fast pace. I want this now. And we don't really look at the ingredients. So, one thing in which RFK mentions, and I think is one of those things that is kind of critical, is, what are seed oils? What are the oils that we consume every day? My normal diet is just going to the store, buying pasta or rice. And I didn't really care about it. I'm just like living my life, not knowing anything. And one thing that really struck with me with RFK was, I've known about this for a while. I've always had, my mother actually is a nutritionist. And one of the things in which I look at is what's actually in those ingredients. So one day I just came to the store. I was going buy my groceries, and I just decided to read some of the ingredients. I was just looking at, my cookies I usually buy or pasta, and every single thing says soy, seed oils. And I'm thinking, like, what's going on? Because from what I've known about, if you do the research, and I'm sure we can provide some links, there are some really bad side effects that can be common when eating harmful chemicals such as soy, palm, canola. All those oils can cause cancer, hyperactivity, puberty, like RFK said. So you might be wondering, like, how do these seed oils become a big part of American diet? It kind of all began in the 20th century when companies were just looking for cheap alternatives. Matter of fact, I don't know if Steve or Don, if you guys can confirm this too, but I thought in the old days, and this is what I've always felt, a lot of the people I've known said a lot of organic foods were actually cheaper at the time. And I think me and Steve talked about this before, that there's a common thing where organic foods and organic purchases were made a lot cheaper. But then came this new change, this boom in the early 20th century. And then all these companies were finding cheaper alternatives for some reason. And, for example, Crisco was one of the first seed oil products that hit the market. And they were made with cottonseed oil. And over time, seed oils were marketed for a healthy alternative, similar to like, okay, everyone, let's buy cigarettes. Cigarettes are going to be great for you. And little did he know, everyone ended up getting lung cancer and dying. So it's just one of those things in which I think as a society, we are looking at everything so fast, but we're not actually looking at, hey, what is this vape pen right here in my hand, which me personally, I shouldn't be smoking, but what can happen to your lungs over time? We may not know now, but as I get older and 20 years, 30 years from now, I may have a health condition if I keep going that path. Or the Zins. I know everyone loves Zin, but do you know what can cause, gum issues, or what are the long-term effects? We don't know. So my question is, like, what is the main problem with sea oils? Our bodies need a balance. We have omega-6, we have omega-3 fatty acids. So I do.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Can I just hold on one second? Because this is very important. And I just want to backtrack a little bit because we've been talking a lot about a history, right? How we 100%. Even got there. Right.
And that's the biggest issue we have. Like, how did we get there? And that's why I wanted to bring that up to you. Like, how did it become a path where we had organic foods for a lot cheaper? And then we just said, okay, let's make everything with corn. Let's make everything with soybean. Look, Don, look at Europe, for example. Everyone is so healthy. Mm-hmm. And you can explain why.
I will. So it is the chemical companies. So Petra Pharma Chemicals. Actually, this is what we need to. This is where RFK. I mean, it's just so amazing that he's come onto this side. So we actually go back in history. Go back to the Rockefellers. Go back to the kerosene production, even before oil. Right, kerosene and production. So think of this. They have the kerosene. They have the oil. All of the stuff that comes out of it as they're processing the oils and all these other chemicals come out, and they have all these chemicals that are just here now. Mm-hmm. And what do we do with them? Well, we start studying them. It's pharmacology comes from petropharmacology. That's where the whole modern medicine actually came from. And this is a whole other wonderful rabbit hole. The Rockefeller Foundation is actually what set up the entire modern medical system in the United States. They actually went around to the universities in the early 1900s and said, hey, we'll give you $1 million to set up your medical establishment school, and we'll accredit you. That's kind of how the American Association of Doctors, the ADA, American Medical Association.
Yeah, and going back to what like in the 1980s, like low fat was a big craze that took off. A lot of people thought the seed oils were promoted for heart healthy fat because they were unsaturated at the time. Mm-hmm. Right,
but it was just it's corporate chemicals being pushed into. So you can go back before that. Again, it's the Rockefellers took these chemicals out of the oil or whatever they were doing processing, and then said, what can we do with these chemicals? Oh, well, we can put them into foods. We can use them as fillers. We can use them as emulsifiers. We can use them as this and that. And so then they started studying them. And actually those additives, I'm sorry, I can't remember the word, but those things that were pulled from the processes were basically the first pharmaceuticals. That's what a lot of those chemicals come from, those extracts, right? It's all just coming from the oil and the kerosene and the energy industry.
Well, and that's why I was going to kind of go back to that. So like the main concern of the high levels of omega-6, the fatty acids we call it, They aren't bad in some ways, but in fact, they're essentials. But here's the catch. Our bodies need a balance of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. So this ratio should be like a 1-to-1 or a 4-to-1, right? So when it comes to American diet, that should be either like a 16-1 or even higher. Because of what we're doing to our bodies with these oils, they're leaving us in an imbalance where we have chronic inflammation nowadays. We have people who have heart disease, cancer, autoimmune conditions. And a lot of the times we don't realize it when we grow up and we're saying, hey, why do my hands hurt every day? Why am I in so much pain?
It's all chemicals.
It's the chemicals. Exactly. And
the red dyes, the red number 5s, all this stuff.
And that's the problem. I have family members who have a lot of problems with autoimmune disorders. I
guess that's why I haven't been able to talk. I'm not sure why, but my microphone kicked off. So
we're learning the kinks.
What I was saying was the Rockefeller Foundation had a lot of influence, tons and tons of influence in the early 20th century, not only in pharmaceuticals, but in education. They wanted to create workers. They wanted to completely overhaul society so that way they have basically almost like a hive. And the thing is they don't mind feeding us slop because it's cheap and profitable to them. And it's absolutely disgusting because the same people that were involved in Project Paperclip went on, and those scientists went on to work for a lot of these companies that were also German companies to start creating these poisons. And you started having all of these movements like the low fat movement. Your body needs fat. The low sugar movement. Your body needs sugar. You cannot replace a normal thing that you've been eating for thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years that is nutritious to your body in the right quantities. Right. And you cannot replace it. Fruit sugars are good for you. You cannot replace it with an artificial thing. But the reason that they do it is because they can patent the artificial thing and you can only get it from them.
Correct.
Right. It's like Vicks Vapor Rub, right? Vicks Vapor Rub. If you think about any product in general, Vicks Vapor Rub is petroleum oil. Petroleum oil is a petroleum byproduct of the oil industry. And that's the thing when really all you need is some coconut oil and some eucalyptus essential oil. You rub that together and you feel good.
And so this right there
is a commodity.
And this right there is exactly why there is suppressed technology, whether it's from recovered UFOs or from inventors. Those things get suppressed for exactly that reason, because they see a complete cash cow with these petroleum products and these canola oils and these things that are just not supposed to be anywhere near our bodies.
Well, that's what happened in the early 1900s. The Rockefeller said, we have all these things. So we have all these petropharma chemicals. So, okay, here's what we're going to do. Harvard Medical School, we're going to give you $100,000, $1 million to fund your medical school. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to accredit your doctors to be AMA accredited doctors, right? But they are only going to use what we say is FDA and eventually becomes FDA certified drugs. So basically,
mafia certified, basically.
The doctors, to be a certified doctor in the United States, you have to go through the AMA, you have to be licensed, right? But you can only use certified licensed techniques, which are approved by the FDA, which is basically chemicals. So all that doctors are doing is basically saying, how do we administer these chemicals that come from the petropharmaceutical industry and what they do to the body? And there is good things. I mean, obviously. Yeah. But it's obvious.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to kind of dive into is, like, to sum it up, when people view this and they're wondering, what do I do? Like, how do I change? Because I'm going to be going home right now and I'm going to be so conscious saying, like, shit, everything I'm eating right now has these oils. How do I avoid this? How do I make it better? So, I wanted to kind of provide the audience a few tips in which I feel like really beneficial. So for me, going forward, I like to cook at home. As much as it sounds so simple, like, what Don was just talking about, try to use other things like olive oil, avocado oil,
natural
goods. There's so many other alternative goods. I love coconut oil. I do everything with coconut oil. I know you guys do too.
It's a high smoke temperature too. So a smoke point. Yeah.
100%. Just read the labels and then, like, kind of sum it up, you can even go to a restaurant, which I didn't even know, but one of my friends told me this recently. If you go to a restaurant, you can ask them saying, hey, what oils do you guys use? If possible, you can make it with just butter or olive oil. You can ask. You don't have to be afraid to ask about that stuff because we're harming our bodies. And the more we keep doing this, there are going to be so many people sick. And I think that's the main reason why RFK is mentioning this, make America healthy again. Maybe the MAGA side of it doesn't understand, or maybe the Democratic side doesn't understand. But I think people are learning about it now, and it's becoming a bigger topic. And that's what I'm excited about. And I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but I feel like there's a big change with this. And I think a lot of these companies, almost like how the pharmaceutical companies get away with pharmaceutical stuff, the FDA and the Food Drug Administration in this country, they need to.
They're hand in hand.
Hand in hand. Exactly.
It's sad. They're completely bought and paid for.
I mean, they literally make money. I mean, we learned this during the COVID crisis, the COVID thing, that people in the FDA and the National Health Institute of Health, they actually make money. They get commission cuts of drugs that they approve.
Yeah.
How does that make sense? And then these people, it's a circular drawer. Then they get hired by the big companies and they go back to the FDA and they get hired by the big companies, go back to the FDA. I mean, it's a giant circle jerk. And it really is. It's in the food pyramid, is then put into the, I remember when growing up in schools, I mean, the crap they fed us.
Poison, right? Prison food.
It's prison, it's crap. It's fried, it's all sodas and all this stuff, but it's all comes from the energy industry. It all comes from that pharmaceutical companies. It all comes down the chain, and then it's approved. And it's like, if you're not a AMA approved doctor using FDA approved pharmaceutical, medicine, you can't practice medicine in this country. And it's not medicine, it's bad. So RFK, and I was like a healthy liberal. That's who I was, like a healthy hippie liberal. And that's where I started. And now I'm here. And RFK going from there to here is just, when we were talking earlier about the journey of the politics and the wave of the insurgency, it seems like the insurgent counterculture has now, Trump is represents the counterculture.
Yes.
He's not, it's like Batman, right? He's not the hero or the leader you want. It's the leader you need. It's kind of the Dark Knight. He's a, I wish it was like the person that could speak like Obama, right? And be an orator like that. Although Trump is pretty funny. I enjoy watching him. He's just funny. He's a showman, but he's what we need right now to reveal everything, to show all the BS. And people are getting behind him. Tulsi Gabbard, she's not a conservative. I mean, she's not a Republican. RFK is not a Republican. He's a liberal, but true liberals, even Bill Maher, it's.
I agree with Bill Maher on more things than I disagree with.
100%.
Let's take a look here. So it looks like Tyler gave me a clip here.
I want to share a clip of just a regular person talking about going to Europe and, having the food there compared to America. And she just got to talk about it really quick.
Yeah, let me go ahead and bring it up on that screen.
Perfect.
Boom.
Thank you.
Weeks now, and I'm just a little bit confused. Because right now I'm not sucking in my stomach. And let me explain to you what I ate yesterday and what I've been consuming, and you'll understand my confusion. So yesterday, breakfast, I had a really, really healthy breakfast of a donut practically.
Sorry to pause it, but it cut off the first couple seconds. She's in Europe, so she's talking about the difference between food in Europe versus here.
Yes, I'm sorry I should have explained it. So she is currently in Europe, and she's talking about the food she's eating right now and then comparing it to America. So go on.
With cream and a cappuccino. Probably did not consume water until about 3 p.m. Super unhealthy. Then for lunch, I had pizza. Practically ate a whole damn pizza myself. And for dinner I had spaghetti and mussels. Probably drank 4 glasses of water the entire day and had like probably 5 glasses of wine throughout the day and like 2 or 3 shots of espresso. Really unhealthy, really, really unhealthy. So I would think that this morning I would wake up and be so bloated, because if I ate like that in the US, I would be extremely bloated. So like my stomach normally like this, like right here is like giving a little bit more, right? And I always just like assumed that it was just my body. Like I just accepted it. I work out and like it just doesn't go away. So it is what it is. But now I'm mad because my stomach looks like that. And all I ate yesterday was carbs. and sugar and wine, and I haven't worked out, and I haven't been walking that much. So you're telling me that whatever's in the food in the US is the reason why I need to work out on a daily basis and can't drink wine all the damn time?
Yep.
And no matter what I freaking do, I got a little...
Yep.
I need to replicate this when I get home, so somebody explain. Like, if I start consuming only food from fresh markets, will my body look like this? Please,
not necessarily.
Please let me know.
Yeah. It's just so crazy. It really is. And that's just one video. There are thousands of videos of people just saying, and I don't know if you guys both been to Europe. I know Steve's been on Don, but you feel like the food is fresh. You feel like you're more energetic. You just don't feel like bloated and tired. And it's almost like, you think about it, like all the food dyes and like all the oils, like it's just what's making Americans so slow and just so tired, and a lot of the mental diseases, all this stuff. There's a lot of things we don't realize that could be all correlated. They
are doing to us what we do to pigs. That's what it is. They're feeding us their slop and their extra junk and making us get fat and disgusting.
And they're making money off of it. And then what they do is they feed it to us, so they're taking the excess stuff they have from their, production of energy.
Poison.
Right. And they're like, well, what do we do with this? We have this commodity. What do we do with it? We don't want to throw it away. Well, we can put it in the food. We can put it in to make pharmaceuticals. And then people will eat it. And then they'll get sick.
And then they'll need us again.
We can then give them medicine and then keep them on that freaking hamster wheel of just sickness. It's the healthcare is about keeping you on the wheel of the most profitable thing to these companies is sick kids. RFK says all the time, it's sick.
Yep.
You get a kid sick, you get a diabetic kid.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, profitable, so profitable. Amazing.
Because they're going to live longer, more than likely.
And what the fascinating thing about RFK, like he can say all he wants about this. I don't think there's one person that actually disagrees with what he's saying. Both people in both parties agree there is a problem. However, they don't want him to talk about this because of the money, which is why when someone speaks up too much, like RFK, he could put his life in danger because they don't want him to talk about this. They want him to shut up because they don't want him to speak the facts and let the people know, like, hey, this stuff isn't good.
Well, look at happened to Tucker Carlson. He was starting when I was on Fox News, and he started piping up against Pfizer, which is one of the biggest funders, and suddenly Tucker's out. Best thing that could have happened to him.
Like 100%. I said, overall, it has been really amazing seeing this coalition of nonpartisan people joining the movement, because at this point it's an American movement. It's not a Republican movement. But did you guys hear there actually was a very high-ranking individual who just joined the coalition the other day? I'm going to pull up the footage right now just so you guys could see. It's absolutely amazing. It's someone you would have never expected. Absolutely amazing. Just joined the coalition.
Presidential hat. Presidential seal on it. You want an autograph? Oh, sure, I'll autograph. Huh? Yeah.
So this was in Pennsylvania where the plane went down in 9/11. This is correct. Those are the firefighters. It's a firehouse.
Yeah, I know.
The firehouse,
Yep.
And I know you would know about that.
My favorite part about it is all the kids are wearing Trump shirts.
What?
Yeah.
I'll be old. Oh, I know.
There was a picture of Biden getting a little touchy-feely with one of the kids, but we won't go there.
He reminds me of the guys I grew up with. There was always one in the neighborhood. Well, I'm the only one. There you go, man. I need that hat. Want my autograph? Hell no.
He just don't give a anymore,
No, just keep playing it.
I ain't going that far. Yeah. There you go.
And that's the election right there.
What a smart man, and a beautiful addition to the coalition. Somebody's got to sniff the kids.
And you saw the picture of him going up into Air Force One with a red hat. I don't know if it was that hat, but it was a red hat. And he knows what he's doing.
He's just trolling at this point. He's so angry at them. Listen, speaking of angry, We're going to move on to another topic, and this is a really serious topic.
Before we do, hold on. I just wanted, before we do, we just need to put a cap on that cap with Biden.
Yes.
The fact that he is so angry. I mean, think about what happened. I mean, I think we talked about during the debate party, when he had his speech at the convention at 12 o'clock at night. They literally, they were running late and they had him speak at 12 o'clock. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. And they pushed him out. He hates Kamala Harris. He hates the Obamas. This was his final FU. I really think
he waited 50 years to be in that position and they took it from him.
And honestly, if he plays ball, Trump's not going to go after his son or after Biden. Trump knows the game. Trump knows the game. If Biden just kind of like plays, Biden is still the president, right? And if he kind of pushes his thumb on the scale a little bit and Trump wins, he goes scot-free. So he's actually kind of playing the math out too, right? Because if Trump wins, he could potentially be in trouble, right? So
and you can kind of tell there's some tension. Like, look at Jill. Jill's not even on the campaign trail.
Oh, she's gone
right now.
She's gone.
She's gone.
Went to the beach. Mm-hmm. So welcome to the coalition, Joe Biden.
Yay. Congratulations.
Cheers.
Well,
thank you, Joe.
So on another note, they finally think that they figured out who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. We've known all along. It was the most obvious thing. And speaking of Joe Biden, I mean, we're going to play this clip because this clip, to me, this is from about 2 years ago, was a dead giveaway. He basically threatened to blow the damn thing up. And this was, let's see here.
Diplomacy is the very best way forward for all sides. We both agree, including best for Russia, in our view. And we have made it very clear we're ready to continue talks in good faith with Russia. Germany has also been a leader in pushing de-escalation of tensions and encouraging dialogue through the Normandy format. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
So there he is on the record 2 years ago, and he's saying that they're going to get rid of the Nord Stream pipeline. And you guys know how this whole Ukraine war has been operating. It's essentially us giving all the intelligence, us providing all the weaponry, and that's essentially how it's been operating. We are pretty much in direct conflict with Russia as we speak. It's really scary because we're on the cusp of World War III right now as we speak. This was, I think, a few weeks ago.
It's interesting, this whole proxy war, because we're kind of testing out what's been so interesting about testing out what war is going to be like in this age. I mean, how tanks are not the phenom on the battlefield anymore, and
we're back to trench warfare like World War I.
It's very different. You have drones delivering napalm and all this craziness.
So this is from Euronews. And again, the Germans have been investigating it, and they've come to a conclusion as to who they think it was, and they think it was Ukraine.
Germany has issued a European arrest warrant for a Ukrainian diving instructor over his alleged involvement in the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines in the Baltic Sea.
Dass der Verdächtige ein ukrainischer Staatsbürger ist das eine. Ich würde daraus noch keine Rückschlüsse ziehen, was die Beteiligung von Staaten angeht. Das muss sicher ermittelt werden, aber immerhin gibt es erste Fahndungserfolge, jetzt Ermittlungserfolge.
Investigators believe the instructor was a member of a team that in September 2022 planted explosive devices on the pipeline route carrying natural gas from Russia to Germany.
Natomiast dla nas jest też dziwne, że osoba ta, będąc poszukiwana przez stronę niemiecką, nie została jej możliwość zatrzymania, zgłoszona i zarejestrowana w systemie SIS Schengen i mogła ta osoba wyjechać po prostu z kraju. Dla nas to też jest zadziwiające.
And this has been a constant escalation. And this goes almost back to like 2015. You can see the murmurings of all this from the Democratic Party, connecting Trump to Russia with the collusion hoaxes. They wanted a war. And the reason I think they want a war is because it's profitable. I mean, 10 years ago, our news was calling Ukraine the most corrupt country on the planet. Do you guys remember that?
Yep.
I remember a hole for that one.
And now, we're acting like Zelensky is the second coming of Christ. It's absolutely insane when you have this completely corrupt establishment. I mean, at this point, we've escalated it so far that Putin is saying, very simply, if we allow long-range weapons to be able to be fired from Ukraine into Russia, he's considering that us being involved directly. And at that point, well, we're providing intelligence, we're providing weaponry, we're providing money, but that's to keep them from coming into Ukraine. Supposedly we're supposed to be protecting borders.
I mean, it's interesting because there's multiple ways of looking at it, because it is taking away Russia's capacity to be involved in World War III. This is draining their resources, draining their manpower. This is a real big sink on them. So if there is a conflict with, between China and Iran and all that, it does actually drain their resources, and we're not putting any manpower. We're just putting money, and we're kind of using old munitions, and we're getting training. That's one thing America's been good at. We've been always at war. We've been training and training and training. We know how to fight. So there is I can see both sides to it, although it should have never happened. It should have never happened because Russia is only fighting a defensive war. Russia's always basically fought defensive wars, it seems.
Correct.
Yeah, but the problem is it's just an endless loop. And that's what,
that's what I'm saying. It's an absolute endless loop. Trump said it best. I don't care who wins. I just want people to stop dying. The war needs to end over there.
So many people are
escalating it. And at this point, if we allow them to start firing missiles and keep in mind, I am not on either side. I just want this war to end. But if we allow them to start firing missiles into Russia, it's World War III. You're looking at the BRICS nations versus NATO. That was what will end up happening.
And it's going to be a mess.
I'm going to play a quick clip here because this over here is Putin explaining, essentially what's going to happen next.
We want to turn out of the war in Ukraine and fears of a wider conflict. President Biden and UK's prime minister met on Friday to discuss allowing the Ukrainian military to use long-range missiles to strike deep inside Russia. But Russian President Vladimir Putin is now warning of severe consequences if that happens. NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian is here with the very latest. Danielle, good morning.
Good morning, Peter. That's right. The war in Ukraine was high on the agenda during this meeting between both leaders, but still no decision has been made public. The Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, has been pleading with allies for months to let his country fire long-range Western-made missiles deep into Russian territory. We're talking specifically here about the U.S. ATACMS and the British Storm Shadows. Ukraine says these long-range weapons will allow its forces to destroy air bases and other military targets from which every single day Russia is launching attacks that are killing Ukrainian civilians. Until it's given the green light by Western countries, the Ukrainian military cannot hit those Russian targets. But the US and the UK appear increasingly open to lifting the restrictions, which prompted a warning from Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, saying that if Ukraine fired those weapons into Russian territory, he would consider the US and other NATO countries directly involved and therefore at war with Russia. His remarks signal he may be willing to escalate against the West in response, and some Western officials are concerned this could mean acts of sabotage against their infrastructure or possibly, Peter, NATO bases.
Danielle, of course, this has been a contentious issue for a long time now. What is the latest on the wider war there, specifically between Russia and Ukraine?
Yeah, well, the Russian Defense Ministry announced this morning that its forces have now captured the village of Zelanye Pershe. That's in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk region. This after an overnight drone attack by Russia on Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities. There were no immediate reports of casualties, but as you can imagine, this prompted President Zelensky to issue a fresh appeal for more air defense and long-range weapons. And Peter, Zelensky will be traveling to the U.S. later this month.
All right, and we'll be there to cover it. Danielle Hamamdjian with the very latest from London. Danielle, thank
absolutely
you.
Insane.
Hey, thanks for it just baffles me how it just keeps happening over and over again. And then Zelensky's coming to the U.S. for help, and then the U.S. is going to provide money, and then we're going to get involved, and then things are just going to escalate.
It's a constant escalation. But the problem that people don't seem to realize is that once this genie comes out of the bottle, it's not going to be like World War II. It's not going to be like World War I. You're going to have the entire planet involved. Just like with COVID, we locked everything down. This is going to be air raids on every inch of the planet. And
I don't think it's going to be that way. I don't think the governments will want that. I think it's going to be electronic warfare. The warfare is going to be so different now. It's just you shut down the grid. The thing is, we've had so much, especially in the United States, someone goes to war with the United States, they're just going to send the cells that have been sitting here, the sleeper cells, into the electrical stations and shut it down.
But that's what I'm talking about.
You knock out the country. That's it.
Once your infrastructure, it's going to be much scarier. You're better off having bombers flying above you than having.
It's not going to happen.
No, I'm saying, I know they're not going to be bombers flying above you. They don't barely have any flying right now in Ukraine and Russia. Right. I agree with you. It's going to be electronic. It's going to be info wars. It's going to be modern, fifth generational warfare,
setting a country on fire.
But that's where it's dangerous. It's not going to be soldiers fighting soldiers. It's going to be billions of civilians dying.
Let me ask you a question, though. As we keep talking about this, how close are we at a point where we can hear about this now, just like North Korea? Hey, we're going to launch nuclear war, blah, blah, blah. And then we don't see anything with
war
that.
Will never happen, in my opinion.
Also, something to consider, which I think is very important to understand about nuclear weapons. Modern nuclear weapons don't have the radioactive effects.
Correct. They don't leave the waste.
And that's something that's not really talked about and people don't really understand, but you actually can see it. Neil deGrasse Tyson actually had said that. I can't remember. I think it was on Joe Rogan. He very briefly, if you were listening for it, you could have caught it, but people in the know, but they don't talk about it. Modern nuclear weapons really don't release that kind of radioactive.
Right now. I got
actually,
it.
that's, I mean, hey,
Bill Maher.
Perfect. Yeah.
We just had one of the, one of the 9/11 conspiracies is that it was actually a tactical nuke placed under the buildings. And if you actually look at the glass, and that's a whole other fun rabbit hole, but that actually created that because there isn't the radiation effect that you would have at Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all that.
Well, another thing I've heard is that they've really been trying to keep that secret.
They don't want people to know that because they like the fear of the radiation. They like the fear that the atomics. Correct.
The mutually assured destruction.
Right. So this is a great clip. Thank you for pulling this up.
My question was, if we can do that, if we can hit the asteroid, could we do that with nuclear weapons? Because it's getting a little chippy out there with Putin. And I don't, I mean, I love Ukraine, but do I love them enough to get radiated?
But you can't do nothing, right? I mean, if in fact there's a tactical nuke that's used by Putin, obviously there needs to be a response.
Okay.
Well, plus modern nukes don't have the radiation problem, just to be clear.
Really?
You'll still blow to smithereens, but yeah, it's a different kind of weapon than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
True. Nuclear weapons, if they're exploded, don't have a radiation problem?
Not if it's hydrogen bombs, no. Not in the way that we used to have to worry about it with fallout and all the rest of that. What you really have to worry about is being vaporized, and after that, if you're not vaporized, blown to bits by the shockwave. That's a way bigger problem that you're going to have.
Well, I'm not worried about that problem.
No, you're not worried about that problem.
I'm not. I mean, this is news to me. This is why it's great to have a scientist.
Wait, just to be clear.
No, yes, be clear.
Because I want to just put on the table the nuclear weapons. Their very existence birthed the Cold War and all of the holding the world hostage for 60 years, or 50 years it was. That's a travesty in the history of civilization. But what I want to say is there's a reaction to nukes that is a little bit out of proportion with what they actually do.
Here's why I'm worried.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried that Putin was going to send his entire ICBM arsenal over here and nuke America. If he did, I'd just kiss my ass goodbye. What I was worried about, and a lot of people are worried about, is, and I've heard this about India and Pakistan also, if they exchange their nuclear weapons, that the radiation in the atmosphere would come over here, would go all over the world, even if it was just a local exchange. Now you're telling me that that is not a worry?
If they use fission bombs, yes, that would be the case.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Well, what is that what they have or is not? Is what kind of... All right, I'm just going to move on. Let's just hope you're right about they don't have radiation.
So you're not supposed to talk about that.
No, because it takes away the fear, and they want fear. Fear is how they operate mostly everything. And you know who doesn't like fear mongers? President Trump. President Trump came out an entire, I think he said it for years and years, but a year ago, he had this huge warning that he came out with, and he was talking about the warmongers and how close World War III is and how we have to be very careful. It's not going to be good for anyone whatsoever. I'm going to play that clip for you right now.
World War III has never been closer than it is right now. We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists and the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the national security industrial complex. One of the reasons I was the only president in generations who didn't start a war is that I was the only president who rejected the catastrophic advice of many of Washington's generals, bureaucrats, and the so-called diplomats who only know how to get us into conflict, but they don't know how to get us out. For decades, we've had the very same people, such as Victoria Nuland and many others just like her, obsessed with pushing Ukraine toward NATO, not to mention the State Department support for uprisings in Ukraine. These people have been seeking confrontation for a long time, much like the case in Iraq and other parts of the world. And now we're teetering on the brink of World War III. And a lot of people don't see it, but I see it. And I've been right about a lot of things. They all say Trump's been right about everything. None of this excuses in any way the outrageous and horrible invasion of Ukraine 1 year ago, which would have never happened if I was your president, not even a little chance. But it does mean that here in America, we need to get rid of the corrupt globalist establishment that has botched every major foreign policy decision for decades. And that includes President Biden, whose own people said he's never made a good decision when it comes to looking at other countries and looking at wars. We have to replace them with people who support American interests. Over our 4 years in the White House, we made incredible progress in putting the America Last contingent aside and bringing the world to peace. And now we're going to complete the mission. The State Department, Pentagon, and national security establishment will be a very different place by the end of my administration. In fact, just into my administration, it'll be a very different place, and it'll get things done, just like I did 4 years ago. We never had it so good. We'll also stop the lobbyists and the big defense contractors from going in and pushing our senior military and national security officials toward conflict, only to reward them when they retire with lucrative jobs, getting paid millions and millions of dollars. Take a look at the globalist warmonger donors backing our opponents. That's because they're candidates of war. I am the president who delivers peace, and it's peace through strength. There was a reason we had no conflict. There was a reason we didn't get into wars, because other countries respected us. I entirely built, all right from the beginning, rebuilt our military. It's a big reason for that. They didn't want to mess around with the United States.
That is what one of the big reasons why they want him dead. That is one of the big reasons that, in my opinion, there was that assassination attempt. They don't want peace in this world. Like we were saying with the food, like we were saying earlier with the powers that be and having control of the presidency. Don, you were saying that. You were saying with the food, Tyler. They don't want it. They can't profit off of peace.
everything's a common denominator. If you look at everything we talk about today, the food, assassination attempts, war, pharmaceutical, everything has a tie into money. And that's all. Money brings power and corruption. And that's why we're in this point. And I think someone like Donald Trump got there and he just said, listen, I have the money. I don't care about it anymore. I want to help people, but they don't want to help us. And that's the reality. And that's how all of us are looking at this today. And we're thinking, what do we do? Because we're just trying to speak up. And I think that's why people don't like when they have the MAGA supporters, because they have those people that speak up. And then the media says, you can't speak up because then we're going to lose money too. So it's, like we talk about, like Don said earlier, it's a rabbit hole. There's always a hole. There's always going to be another place to dig into it. But how do we find a way out?
It's sad. The reason that it is the way it is because, scientifically, a society in fear is much, much easier to control. But 100%. We can't live in fear. That's the one thing you can never do, is never live in fear. Never live in fear.
Never live in fear.
So
Don's muted you.
Don, you are muted, it looks like.
Oh, there we go. I get why people don't like Trump. I really do. He's not
he's brash
package. But
Mm-hmm.
what he's doing is he's dragging the culture along with him. Whatever it is, it's what's happening is important. And whatever this momentum is, and again, I go back to this quote, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Look, Dick Cheney endorsed Kamala Harris. That's all you really need to know. Look, the people that have been screwing us for decades and decades, Trump is the only president to lose money as the president, right? So what's his motivation? You have to go to motive. Follow the money, follow the motive. Yes, he's brash, he's egotistical, but is he really out for himself? Because if he was selfish, why is he doing this? Narcissism, I guess. Okay, maybe he's a narcissist, probably. I mean, he is.
Right, but if he was a narcissist alone, he wouldn't try to solve problems.
He was fine. He was living a great life. People liked him, and now he's getting. It's just weird, and it's very interesting. And I think what we're going to get to next, I think, is great, because this is a great segue, because we talked about the deep state and all the things, and how you select a president, not elect a president, right? And Trump came in and he didn't expect to get elected, and a bioweapon, let's call a spade. A bioweapon was released, and all the rules were changed for 2020, and they basically burned the world down. They pulled the lever and they got him out of office. And then I really do believe that January 6th was a staged action. I mean, if you look at the pipe bombs, you look at things like that. I mean, they put a noose up and said, hang Mike Pence. And it's like, who did that? Who? Anybody could.
I wouldn't say staged. What I would say is a trap.
Mm-hmm. It was a trap. Very good. I think that's better.
It was a trap for Patriots, because there was a lot of good people there. Our
where's Admiral Akbar?
Our fourth guy was actually there. Damien was there, so we can actually have a whole conversation about it. He was right there on the ground, so he was there day of. So
they thought that was going to be the nail in the coffin. They thought that was going to be it for Trump, and that's it for the movement. And people didn't give up because they saw through the bull. And then Biden wasn't supposed to be president. See, we'll go back to our history lesson before we get into here. It was supposed to be Clinton for 8 years, and then maybe Gavin Newsom or something like that. So he screwed up the whole game. Biden was never supposed to be president.
No,
but he was basically dragged over in 2020 because there was nobody else. They looked at Kamala Harris like 4 times. They looked at all these other people, but they couldn't get anyone to convincingly sell the thing they were going to pull, the shenanigans they were going to pull. They were going to do anything they could to keep this guy out of office. And they did it. And then they only hired Kamala because Biden said, we have to have a black woman. So they only had Kamala because they had to do a DEI hire. She was never supposed to be in that position. And then now she's in that position, and they didn't expect this. It's the irony is great, because they didn't expect then Biden to either get dementia. I mean, he really descended during his term.
I'm
just curious about how much planning is behind the scenes, like we talk about right now. Like how much, like, is there someone like the main person? Like, I think we talked about this before. I think I told you, Don, actually. I think there's like this higher up that is, you know, the president just is a figure in a sense of, you know,
you never
looking
see
at
the
that
real.
person.
You never see the real people in charge.
Right.
Yeah,
Of course.
a real person.
People with tons of money and tons of power, they have nothing better to do. They're trying to pull the strings. And of course, that's what you would do. And you want to influence things. Look at George Soros. You look at things like that. And of course, and they have different ways of thinking about things.
Look at even our guy, Elon Musk. He does the same stuff. We just happen to agree with it.
Right. He seems to be on the other side. Some people actually have to what his whole point, and this is a great rabbit hole for another day, is he just wants to maintain and continue human consciousness and the expansion of human consciousness. So, you know, we've come to a wild, almost we're in the climax, I think, of this. I don't know, we're in Act 3 maybe of the Trump tales. I mean, this is wild, and now
it's
Trump.
This is going to be in history books, though. I feel, Don.
Oh, like, yeah, and the segue
crazy.
into this next topic here is Trump's learned to play the game. He got into 2016, and who did he choose as chief of staff was Reince Priebus, who was the head of the RNC. And he didn't have any, you have to staff everybody in the government. Trump had they didn't have a plan. They didn't have a staff. It's one thing to run for president, but to be president, it's a big job. But it's not only that, but all the people you have to staff, and they just didn't have a team. He didn't have the team. Right. And now he's coming in with a team. And I would love to see Tulsi Gabbard as like Secretary of State, RFK as Attorneys General. And it's different.
He's realizing what he did wrong the first term. So it's good now he's realizing, like, who are the people he can trust? Who are the ones that he can have conversations with to make decisions? So I think as he's getting the people he needs, I think this team seems, like you said, is like the A team. He's
got the A team now. We've had 8 years basically to build the team and the and now it's not as a team, it's a coalition. I mean, the Teamsters, you have so many people. I mean, the way he was talking at the crypto conventions, the independence convention, the libertarian convention. I mean, he is building a coalition. Democrats are voting for him. Independents are voting for him because it's not him.
The Justice League.
It's the movement. It's the Avengers. It's literally like, all right, do we want the establishment crap, that George H.W. Bush, the CIA, the people that have been running and pulling the strings, the military industrial complex, or not that? Because at the end of the day, whatever, they don't want Trump to win. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. They don't want Trump to win. So that must tell you something. And I think, and this is coming to this this clip here. I think Trump's learned to play the game, and we've had a circle, a lot of things about this Trump assassination attempt, and this is, I guess, for our final segment of the day, we'll go down this rabbit hole. I believe that Trump staged his own assassination attempt, and I think it was for the greater good.
I don't,
and it's horrible.
But I do think that your theory is very interesting. I definitely disagree with you on it, but I love to hear it, and I think we're going to dive deep into it. Just want to say one more thing before I start this video, because this video is going to be kind of a 3D reconstruction of the assassination attempt. I got a few other videos prepared for you, Don, based on, the stuff that you really, really wanted to see. But we are now at the point where it is not left versus right. We are now at the point where it is not a political thing anymore. We are at a crossroads in this country. And our future will either be a future of continued freedom or of servitude and suffering. That's where we are. And we have to get to the side of freedom. We cannot lose this battle. We cannot lose this battle. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to bring this up full screen. And we're going to go ahead and watch this here.
The assassination attempt of Donald Trump set off a panic as the bloodied former president was surrounded by Secret Service agents and hurried into his vehicle. An Associated Press analysis of more than a dozen videos and photos from the scene shows how close the shooter 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to get to the stage where the former president spoke. Here's what's known so far about the shooting on Saturday, July 13th. As rally goers wait for Trump, a young man is seen pacing around the edges of the rally area, looking at the buildings and acting suspicious. He was in an area to the right of the stage, outside the perimeter of the rally. At around 5:20 p.m., local law enforcement photographed a man with a backpack and a rangefinder. They radioed their concerns to other officers and circulated the photo with officers outside the security perimeter. But then the man vanished from view. Trump takes the stage at 6:02 to the strains of God Bless the USA. He waves and begins his regular rally speech. Spectators were seated in front of him and behind on risers. Secret Service sniper teams can be seen positioned on 2 different rooftops behind the stage, looking in opposite directions. At 6:09, witnesses spot a man climbing the roof of a 1-story building, about 147 yards from the stage.
People in our country that should be dangerous people, criminals.
A local officer climbed to the roof to investigate, but fell after losing his grip. Trump continued his speech and turned to the right to point towards a screen displaying border crossing numbers. At 6:11, 3 shots are fired. Secret Service agents pile atop the former president. 5 more shots are fired. About 10 seconds later, a Secret Service sniper fired back with 1 shot, hitting Crooks in the head and killing him. 3 spectators, seated in bleachers between where Crooks was positioned and where Trump was standing, were hit. Corey Comparator, a 50-year-old former firefighter, suffered a fatal shot. About 1 minute after the shooter is hit, the Secret Service say he is down. Trump is taken off stage, stopping to pump his fist and yell to the crowd.
So yeah,
that's
just kind of a breakdown of what had happened. Now, Don, I know you have a little different idea of how the events happen to have unfolded. Why don't you get into that for me a little bit?
When I first saw this happening, look, let's just backtrack a little bit. This is a hard, high stakes game. This is life or death. War is hell. Now I'm just going to give it a little. When the Allies in World War II cracked the Enigma machine, right? Cracked the code for the Nazis, right? There's actually a great movie with Cumberbatch, Benedict Cumberbatch, the guy who played Doctor Strange. He actually played a movie where he was what's the computer, the AI test, the Turing test. Alan Turing. He played Alan Turing. Yeah, sorry. He played Alan Turing, and it was a very awesome movie. Go on Netflix and watch it. Awesome movie. And they basically cracked the code, but they couldn't tell the upper echelon. It was very secret that they cracked the code because they didn't want, they basically couldn't let the Nazis on that they cracked the code. Meaning they had to allow, they were like, we could save all these destroyers, of all these seamen, from getting hit by U-boats. They knew where
they had
the
to sacrifice.
They had to let all of these people die to win the war. It's very sad, right? The tens of thousands of people they had to let die for the greater good. It's horrible. War is hell. I mean, you look at the debates about the atomic bombs in Japan. It was horrible. But how many more people would have died if we had to invade Japan? It would have been awful. And that's a whole other debate. But that's kind of, I'm kind of setting this up because we are kind of in an existential war crisis. It really is that important. I mean, we're going to have fun rabbit holes about, the Federal Reserve and the coups and the civil wars and Lincoln assassinations and all that good fun stuff. So that's kind of a setup. But we come to Trump. We're in an existential war, and he knows where the stakes are. And he saw what happened at January 6th. He saw the trap, and he saw the Russia. He saw all these things played. And I actually don't think he realized at first just how dirty it was. He knew, but he didn't really know like how dirty it was. And I think he got wise. And, you know, everyone was saying at the beginning of the cycle, they're going to kill him. They're going to kill him. They're just going to kill him.
Yep.
And when this happened, now keep in mind, Secret Service protection isn't really ramped up until you're actually the nominee. So yeah, he's an ex-president, so he has some of this, he has some of that. But if you think about it, if you're, you know, just gonna put my tinfoil cap on, but if you're a strategist,
big tinfoil cap you got there.
Yeah, we're gonna go from
I like his idea.
We're gonna go fully from an objective military strategy. Let's just lay it out. We are at war. We must. So let's just assume. Let's make some assumptions. You're on the right. You're with Trump. You must win, right? If we don't win, a lot of people, other people are going to die, right? If we don't win this election, things are going to be very, very bad because the wrong people, the corrupt people, are going to be in control, and more people will suffer. So if let's just all come into agreement that that's the stakes, right? If Trump doesn't win, those are the stakes. Okay. So how do you win an election? I mean,
you fake an assassination.
Now,
or you stage it.
You stage an assassination.
You stage it.
And people are going to say, "Oh my God, that's crazy. Someone actually died." Yes, someone did die, and it's horrible. And that's what makes it real. Because if someone didn't die, then you know it was staged, right?
My only question is like, why would they be sacrificed? And I know you're talking about it, but go on.
The sacrifice made it real. The sacrifice buttoned it up. So
my question for you is, how do you make that shot?
You have two shooters. There's always two shooters. It's the grassy knoll. There's always two shooters. I mean, if we go into clips, and we actually have some clips of the audio analysis of the day, you know, this dickwad.
How do you make that shot without hitting the president?
What do you mean?
It wasn't bullets, no.
Oh, so this was great. And I don't know if you have this clip. The FBI, there was some question about, was it shrapnel or a bullet that hit Trump's ear? And everyone was like, and it was interesting on the left, they were like, oh, that's fake. And I believe that. It was WWE.
I got it for you right now. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
I guess I'm not clear exactly where you said there were 8 shell casings on the roof. So 8 bullets were fired. We obviously know that Mr. Comparatori lost his life. Two other rally goers were injured, seriously injured. And then the one that hit President Trump. Does that account for, were some of these individuals hit multiple times? Where did all 8 bullets go is, I guess, my question.
I don't have that in front of me. I'm happy to circle back and get that to you. It's assuming we have that information yet. As I said, I think with respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear. So it's conceivable, although as I sit here right now, I don't know whether that bullet, in addition to causing the grazing, could have also landed somewhere else. But I believe we've accounted for all of the shots and the cartridges. So let us get that.
It's my understanding that the very first one was the one that hit the president. Is that the very first shot, or is that not accurate?
I don't, as I sit here right now, I don't know the answer to that. I believe we know the answer to that. I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Because it didn't. So here's my timeline. What happened? Crooks get up there. They got this crazy kid to do it. He's shooting blanks. There's a second shooter in the tower. Trump knows this is going to happen. Now, this is the highest stakes of the highest stakes game. He knows this is going to happen. And that second shooter, his job is to take out a civilian and to shoot the one of the cranes, like the cranes that are holding the flags, kind of the hydraulics and flag. And Trump ducked down just like in WWE style. You see him in the ring, and I wish we should have pulled up a clip, from the WWE. It's razor blade to the ear, just like that. Boom. Because you see him, if you kind of watch the clip of the assassination, it's very like, ooh, wow. And then he comes up and he's suddenly all bleeding and all this. And, and what's great about the ear is a lot of blood comes out of the ear. So I actually had my industrial pierced once and literally just bled constantly. That cartilage there, you hit that, it just bleeds and bleeds and bleeds. So all he has to do is a little razor blade and you're bleeding.
So you're saying that he grabbed his ear like this and then has the knife really quick.
Yep. And the second shooter was in the water tower. And so he was the actual sniper. He had the real bullets and he had to take somebody out because you have to make it look real. And what happened is they actually created a GoFundMe for that person. So that that man that died, his family has like $3 million now. So his sacrifice, it's horrible to think about, but that's a hero. I mean, that is a hero that is an unacknowledged hero. It's like in the covert realm.
Let me ask you this. How does your version of events get Trump into the White House?
Well, this was pre-Biden stepping down, right?
Yes, this almost caused Biden to step down, which is why I think, personally, that's why I think it happened as it was. And I think Biden was aware of it. I think he stepped down because he went, crap, he's supposed to be dead. I got to step down. That's how I look at it.
Right. So you kind of think that so here's my thing.
Well, that's the normal way of thinking. Yeah.
If the Biden administration, if the deep state, if the JFK, the CIA wanted to kill Trump, they would have killed him because there was a second shooter. So what we're going to do in this analysis, let's do this. There was a second shooter. The thing is, why did the second shooter miss? They don't miss. The second shooter doesn't miss. The patsy, there was the patsy. That's why he was dead. Yeah. He was dead. Crooks was dead. There was a second shooter. But the second shooter, he didn't miss. He hit exactly his target.
Which was civilians.
So let's just play this really quick. This is an audio analysis. This is really great here. And this is just the breakdown of the shot. So I don't know if this is exactly, there's a couple different clips there because the world's fastest shooter, like there was 8 shots.
It's part of it. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, this is definitely the fastest shooter comes up after this, I'm pretty sure. Okay.
Does it do it? Yeah, you betcha. It maps on perfectly. So again, top audio from Died Suddenly, second audio line from that link right there, third line from that
watch this
piece right there.
Is this a second group of I want to go to the group
I might
of
have
5 shots.
That last third one. Don't hold me to that one. I'll fix it if it's true. So get this. Right here. Here's what I want. So those 5 shots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is mysterious because these 5 shots here, when you take a look at them from the beginning of the first shot to the beginning of the 5th shot, so that's how fast you could take those 5 shots. It turns out that the total thing is only 0.775 seconds from beginning to end. Now, as a shooter, I'll tell you, you kind of have to work at it to get 5 shots off in 0.775 seconds.
World record holder is about
and
to
you can
come
see
up.
the splits here because the first shot was a quarter of a second, 0.256. But look at these, 0.18, 0.17, 0.15. I'm going to have to defer now. We're going to have to bring in, and I'm going to introduce you to somebody called Jerry Misalek, because once you understand Jerry Misalek a little bit, this is just a minute, and then the other thing is just a couple of seconds.
Watch this.
I have to introduce you to Jerry real quick, because once you know Jerry, you're going to rethink about those 5 shots in a whole new way.
In 1999, they sponsored a publicized attempt by shooter Jerry Michalek to challenge Ed McGivern's speed shooting record set back in 1932. Using a Smith & Wesson Performance Center-built 8-shot revolver, Michalek attempted to both outshoot McGivern and set 2 new world records.
Watch how fast this guy is.
You want to film this one?
Go, Jerry.
Go for it, brother.
He's such a legend.
108-degree heat, I believe it was, down in Mississippi in front of a very
you won't believe what you're
supportive audience.
If you don't know anything about guns.
He did it. I mean,
Jerry is like
8 rounds in 1 second on one target.
Shooter ready. Stand by.
Oh my God! He did 8 rounds on 4 targets in 1.06. And then he did the 6 shots, a reload, and 6 shots in 2.9.
This is a revolver reload. This isn't taking a mag out. This is a revolver.
Oh my God!
All right.
Oh my. Imagine running into that guy's house by accident.
Hey, listen, we have no problem here.
Where?
Yeah, so absolutely crazy how fast that guy could shoot. Don, you are muted.
You're muted.
clip there while we're talking about where you see the actual 8. I want to hear the shots. There's an actual clip there. If you can, Steve, look, there's an actual clip of the 8 shots that were shot because Crooks took the first shot and that was like, okay, it's go time. Ba, ba, ba. And then you hear ba, 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 ba. And there's different echoes. The way that echo analysis, go back to that clip. There's an analysis.
Let's get that clip.
Are different, right?
I think I might have it here.
It's here's from a different caliber. It's a different echo.
I want to hear that. Yep.
This is it. There you go.
And I think I can explain what it was, to be honest, after. But
from all that screaming and the shots from video 2, we have in blue the first 3 shots here. We have more shots here from a second weapon. I'm not sure about this one. It has a very different sound that we heard. And here's the final last shot, which I believe is from, oops, sorry, don't have my thing. You don't know what I'm pointing at. This is the 5 that make a very distinct sound. Here's one with a very different crack in it. That's the 6th shot in the string. And then here we have the final last one, which I think is the sniper weapon, which is probably the one that put the bullet just over the left eye of Crooks on the roof. So we're going to take a closer look at the blue, the red, the blacks here and listen to these things. But once again, let's just listen very carefully and we'll go back and forth until you're certain of this yourself. Here's just the first 3 shots from that video. I haven't done anything, no audio. I haven't done any enhancements. This is both of these video audio pieces are exactly pulled straight from the video itself. Nothing else. I haven't boosted any. I haven't done any filtering. Raw files. Okay. So, and by the way, every instinct in me was to try and minimize all the screaming, but I was like, nope. That just add like, what did you do? And then there's questions. These are raw files. Here's 1, 2, and 3 to start. Okay. Listen to that again. And one more time. Okay. Now let's listen to the next string. Ooh. Yeah. Hear that? Yeah. So 6 sounds different to me, but here's an interesting thing. 1, 2, and 3, besides being muffled and further away, it doesn't have echoes. Here we have, this is a shot here, this one, this peak. Oh, darn it, I don't have my thing up again. Here we go. So this here is a shot. This is an echo. Very clearly an echo, and a shot in an echo, and a shot in an echo. So this is actually critical evidence because you hear that there's echoes coming off. So that also allows us, again, to analyze where was this gun. But first up, we just have an absolutely different sound between the first 3. There's no echo. It's much further away. It's more muffled. It's just not in the same place at all. But these next ones, very different sound, totally different weapons. Okay, full stop. We have 2 separate weapons. Plus, we have no echoes coming off of the first 3. And then we do have echoes coming off of the next set.
Pause it right here. And then the last shot, and then the counter snipers. So you have Crooks shooting, fire. And then you have the real sniper in the water tower, actually shooting the real shots. And then you have the counter sniper. So there's 3 separate weapons, and you can actually hear it in the analysis. And there's a whole bunch more you can dig into it. So, okay, we have a second shooter. All right. The second shooter wouldn't miss, and he didn't. And this is the point. They had to take out a civilian. It's awful. And that's why this was buried so quickly. That's why this went. Trump said it in his speech during the RNC. I'm only going to talk about this once, and he kind of didn't make it a thing. You know, they had the thing. He basically what it was, and everybody in the deep state knew what he did. They all know he set it up, but they couldn't say anything because that would basically open up the rabbit hole of all the other things that they've set up, and they couldn't admit it. He decided to play. He beat them at their own game, and it's horrible.
I'll tell you what. I'm not a big fan of Senator Blumenthal out of Connecticut. I'm originally from
good old Connecticut. Me too.
Well, but I think we're about to see another 9/11 commission style report coming out of there. This is what he had to say.
I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures by the Secret Service in this assassination attempt on the former president. But I think they also ought to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be to them in terms of providing information.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I'm not going to drag it out.
They know. The deep state, everybody in the intelligence apparatus, they know what happened. This is how the game is played. And Trump played it beautifully. He did it right before the nomination. He went right into that. I mean, the momentum going into the RNC was insane. When you went into the RNC, it was like, there's no possible way Trump is going to lose.
If you're right, and again, I will say a couple of things. The panic from the left points to what you're saying. It's almost hard to believe because it is difficult to believe. But if you're right, if you are right, then we have some crazy things coming in.
I mean, it's part of the game, and it's tragic. It's horrible to think that they sacrificed a civilian like that. But again, it's war, and you look back, it's historic. There's absolutely precedent. It's only one person compared to all these other, but it won the game because it wrapped up. Because what happened? Now he's not going to get shot at because of that. Secret, Service was just double. Right. You know what I mean? Tripled.
So
like there's
so
now
you're saying you can't kill me. I already tried.
Exactly. He's got the sympathy vote. Now he's saying, you try to shoot me in the face. I mean, now they're not going to be able to do that because security, now the Secret Service is being investigated. I mean, it was perfect. I mean, how he did it, what it was, I mean, where it was, there's just everything about it is just so perfect and beautiful. And it's horrible. But it's war, and war is hell. And I think we just need to understand the stakes of this are so
it's very high stakes. Very high.
And there we are.
On that note, we are getting to the very end of our stream. It has been wonderful, gentlemen. It's been a very wonderful evening. Thank you.
Very enlightening.
So we will be back starting on Wednesdays. We're no longer going to be doing late nights. So every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time will be on for 2 hours.
Ish.
So make sure to subscribe.
Make sure to subscribe, please, so I can pay my bills.
Now, before we go, I mean, the great reveal, right? So something I think, we're trying to figure out our format of our show. So I hope everyone's we're trying to feel it out. We're going to do some current events and some news in the beginning, and then we're going to kind of go down a rabbit hole towards the end. And I feel like we should leave everyone with a little cliffhanger, right? A little something to think about. So did you guys know? So I want to ask you guys a question. I don't know if you know this, and you all those listeners. There was a person, I don't know if you know his name. So I think that's this. When Albert Einstein was asked what it's like to be the smartest man in the world, what did he say? He said, I don't know. Ask Nikola Tesla. So Nikola Tesla, who died suddenly in the Hotel New Yorker in 1943, right at the onset of World War II, with trunks of patents of lots of things like time travel devices and laser beams and all these crazy things. Because basically Einstein had the theories, Tesla had the tech. The technology, and this is going to be such fun wormholes of Project Looking Glass and all of these things about how you can use gravity and electromagnetism to warp space time, and you get the Philadelphia experiment and Diglocken and the Nazis' time travel experiments, and why they weren't even worried about nukes because they were building basically UFOs and all of this kind of stuff. This crazy technology.
Whoa, don't give them too much.
Oh no. So
what's
Nikola Tesla dies, right? He dies in the hotel in beginning of 1943, right? And the FBI, who had set up shop in another room in the hotel, basically the protocol of the hotel is 3 days without hearing from somebody. That's when the maids go in and everything. So the FBI knew he was dead, and they had 3 days to inspect all the patents, the trunks of patents of all of Tesla's papers. Everything Tesla had was in that room. So the FBI went to a very well-known MIT professor, Okay, this guy who was involved in all the radar, which we'll talk about, carrots making your eyes better. It's not a thing. It's all propaganda, but that's fun for the next rabbit hole. So they went to an MIT professor, and do you know his name? They were like, hey, guy, come in here and investigate all of these patents and tell us, is there anything for national security that we need?
What was his name?
Trump. John George Trump. It was
our great reveal.
Donald
great
Trump's
reveal for today.
paternal uncle. So Donald Trump's uncle he's 1 degree of separation of time travel technology. And the rabbit hole goes deep
to come
on that one.
on Wednesday. Make sure to definitely tune in. Have a great night.